In an upscale restaurant in Manhattan, everything felt perfectly normal until my daughter, Olivia, lifted her glass of red wine. The warm, golden light reflected off the crystal as she smiled that smile I knew too well, the kind that never reached her eyes. Ethan, her husband, adjusted his tie, playing the role of the polished gentleman. But I already knew they had planned this little performance tonight. Cheers, Olivia said, her voice slicing through the soft jazz. A toast to my mother. The mood around the table shifted. After 66 years of living in America, I'd learned to read a room. Olivia went on, her tone dripping with mockery. To the mother who always fails, loses her way, and still thinks she matters. The restaurant went silent. Ethan gave an awkward laugh, trying to smooth the tension. A few people glanced our way. I kept my hands still on the table, no shaking, no reaction exactly what Olivia expected. These hands had once held her as a lefta, baby, worked double shifts at the hospital to pay for her schooling, and signed every check that gave her the life she called deserved. Funny, I said quietly, my voice steady, not wounded but cold. I lifted my glass and looked straight into her eyes. In that instant, I saw it all, the deliberate cruelty, the pleasure of hurting me, and the confidence that I'd never dare fight back. A toast? I said softly. To the failed mother, who just closed every account that paid for your apartment and your credit card debt. Olivia froze, her glass suspended midair. What did you say? Ethan asked, his voice dry. You heard me, I replied, sipping my wine as if we were discussing the weather. This morning, at 9 a.m., I went to the bank. I closed the account for your downtown apartment, your credit cards, and your car insurance. The restaurant fell into silence again. Olivia turned pale. You're lying. I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and handed it to them. Accounts closed. Balance, 0. I never lied, Olivia. But you've been lying to me for years. Ethan tried to keep his composure. Melissa, this must be a misunderstanding. Olivia was just joking. Joking? I asked, never breaking eye contact. You find it funny to call a failure the woman who paid your rent for 5 years? To call useless the one who covered your credit card debt every month? To call unimportant the mother who gave up her youth so you could have this life? You're overreacting, Olivia said stiffly. It was just a joke. Really? I smiled faintly. Or did you just assume I'd never have the courage to say, enough? A few waiters began to watch. The restaurant manager stood at a distance. You can't do this, Olivia snapped. You have an obligation. I'm your daughter. Yes, I said calmly. You're my daughter, but not my creditor, and certainly not my default heir. I took another sip of wine, the dry taste filling my mouth, the flavor of freedom. The apartment you live in is under my name. The car you drive is under my guarantee. The credit cards you use are backed by my assets. And, Olivia, all of that can change right now. You're crazy, Ethan muttered. But I saw his hands tremble. I'm not crazy, Ethan. I'm just tired. Tired of being an ATM for a daughter who despises me. Tired of being the failure paying debts for the successful. Olivia stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You can't do this to me. What will you do? I asked evenly. Sue me? Tell everyone your failed 66-year-old mother stopped paying for her 41-year-old daughter? Silence. Olivia was calculating the cost, her finances, her reputation, her friends, all built with my money. This isn't over, she hissed. I finished my wine. No, Olivia. It's just beginning. I signaled the waiter. Check, please, just for me. When the bill arrived, I left a generous tip, stood up, and grabbed my purse. I looked at my daughter one last time. Live well, Olivia, a life you can actually afford. I walked out of that restaurant, leaving behind not just the dinner, but decades of quiet endurance. They didn't know I'd been preparing for this moment. Every word, every detail had been planned. Because a woman who has raised a child, buried a husband, and built a life from nothing knows exactly when it's time to reclaim her power. And that night in Manhattan, it was my time. As I stepped into the street, glowing with city lights, the autumn breeze brushed against my face, and my mind drifted back 26 years. Olivia was 15 then. The first time she said she was ashamed of me. We were at a neighborhood grocery store. I was counting out coins for rice, beans, and a bit of meat for the week. She wanted the expensive cereal from the commercials, the kind happy families ate together at breakfast. "Why can't we live like normal families?" she asked, her voice dripping with teenage contempt. And I, a single mother just trying to survive, could only whisper, "Because, Olivia, I'm doing the best I can." I never imagined that simple truth would become the seed of 30 years of resentment. Olivia's father died when she was 12 years old, a factory accident in Ohio. It was quick, brutal, with no insurance, no savings, leaving behind only a mortgaged house and a small union benefit. At that time, I, Melissa, was 36, working 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and selling car insurance in the afternoons. Olivia never understood. To her, I was just the mother who couldn't give her what her friends had brand-name clothes, summer vacations, or lavish birthday parties. I was the woman who came home with calloused hands, stayed up late, paying bills, and turned down invitations because I couldn't afford a new dress. "Sam's mom is a widow too. Why can't you be like her?" she asked once. When I refused to attend a parent meeting because my shoes were too worn out. Sam's mother was luckier. Her husband had left her a small furniture store that she managed successfully. Sam had organic cereal, a new backpack every year, and birthday cakes with 3 tiers. "Not everyone gets the same chances, sweetheart," I told her. But to Olivia, my struggle was a personal failure. At 18, she left for college in New York City. I scraped together every penny for her tuition, sold my mother's jewelry, worked night shifts, even took on loans I knew would take years to repay. I truly believed Olivia deserved a better life than mine. During her first college years, her calls were always short and centered on money. She needed money for books, rent, and the endless emergencies that always appeared just as I managed to save a little. "Mom, I need materials for a project," she would say. And I always found a way to send it, even if it meant living on instant noodles for a week. Then she met Ethan, the son of a well-off family from Connecticut, a business major who carried the air of someone who had never had to count every dollar. The first time I met Ethan during one of their short visits home, he looked at me with a mix of pity and disdain. "So, you're Olivia's mother?" he said, as if confirming something unimpressive. Olivia graduated and got a job at an advertising firm in Manhattan. Ethan joined his family's business. They had a small wedding, not because I couldn't afford more, but because Olivia said, "Simplicity is elegance." I knew the truth. She was ashamed, afraid her in-laws would see a cheap wedding hosted by her mother. When they finally moved to New York, I thought things might get better, that distance might heal the cracks caused by years of hardship. But I was wrong. Olivia only called when she needed something: money for an apartment deposit, furniture, Ethan's debts, or a vacation to rekindle their marriage. And every time, I helped because she was my daughter, and because, deep down, I still believed that if I helped enough, she would forgive me for once being poor. Her visits became rarer, When she came, Ethan was always with her. They talked about their careers, projects, things a mother like me wouldn't understand. I became a spectator in my own daughter's life. "How's work, Mom?" she would ask, her eyes never leaving her phone. I'd try to ask, "Any plans for the weekend?" She'd sigh, as if conversation with me was a burden. But what hurt most were her casual jokes, light words that cut deep. "You should really remodel your house, Mom. It looks like something from the 80s. Are you still cleaning offices? Isn't it time to retire?" "Ethan says you should invest in something more modern. Old houses like yours aren't worth much." Each word chipped away at me. 6 months ago, Olivia called in the middle of the night, her voice trembling. Ethan had lost his job. They were drowning in debt. The Manhattan apartment was beyond their means. "Mom, I need your help. Just for now," she said. No shame, no gratitude, just the expectation that I would rescue them again. And I did. I paid the rent, their credit cards, the utilities, the health insurance, their entire life. During those 6 months, Olivia never once called just to ask how I was doing. Every call was a request, every visit, a transaction. Until 3 weeks ago, I overheard something I should never have heard. Olivia was visiting, standing in the kitchen on the phone while I was making coffee. She thought I couldn't hear her. "Sam, you have no idea how exhausting it is dealing with my mom," Olivia said, her tone dripping with contempt. "She's always whining about money, about her hard life. Honestly, if she weren't paying our bills, I'd have no reason to stay in touch." I stood there, my hand frozen around the coffee cup. 30 years of sacrifice reduced to a financial transaction. "No, they don't understand anything about modern life," Olivia continued. "My mother is stuck in the past, trapped in that poor person mindset from her generation. Ethan says that's typical for people like her." I finished making the coffee automatically, carrying the tray into the living room as if I hadn't heard a word. But that night, when I was alone in my small house in Portland, Oregon, I made a decision. If Olivia only saw me as a source of money, if my worth as a mother was measured by what I could provide, then it was time for both of us to understand what help really meant. I began to plan not out of anger, but with the calm precision of someone who had finally learned her place. And 3 weeks later, we sat in that restaurant, the one where Olivia herself handed me the perfect opportunity to carry out my plan. After 30 years of being the not good enough mother, I was ready to become the mother who was enough. 3 weeks before that dinner, I was organizing papers at my desk when the phone rang. It was Richard Moore, my trusted lawyer for 15 years. "Melissa, I need to see you right away. Can you come to my office tomorrow?" His tone was serious, the kind of serious that only came when something truly important was happening. He wasn't a man who liked drama, so when he called like that, I knew something big was coming. The next day, I went to his office wearing my navy blue suit, the one I saved for moments when I needed to remind people, and myself, that I was still strong and clear-headed. Mr. Moore greeted me with concern, his glasses sliding down his nose just as they always did when he was about to deliver bad news. "Sit down, Melissa. There's something you need to see." He spread a stack of papers across the desk bank. Statements, legal forms, documents I had never seen before. "Olivia came to see me last week," he said, and the air in the room instantly grew heavy. "She wanted information about your assets, bank accounts, and investments." "Why would she need that information?" I asked, though a cold feeling was already forming in my chest. "She asked about your will, your inheritance arrangements, and how to transfer ownership of your assets before the time comes, Mr. Moore had once been my late husband's attorney and had remained the person I trusted most after his death. He was the one who drafted my will years ago, when Olivia got married, a simple document leaving everything to my only daughter, as any American mother might do. I want to know exactly what she asked, I said, my stomach tightening. She asked if it was any way to speed up the process, if you could sign over your assets now while you're still healthy and mentally sound. Mr. Moore pulled a file from his cabinet, the one Olivia had left behind. Inside were documents she had gathered herself. Guides on transferring property between family members, methods to avoid inheritance taxes, and instructions on how to request legal guardianship over an elderly person's finances. Legal guardianship? I repeated, my blood running cold. Yes, Melissa, he said quietly. She was very specific about it. She claimed she was worried about your mental health, that you sometimes forget to pay bills or get confused about money. All lies. I managed my finances better than most people half my age. Every bill was paid on time, and my investments grew steadily year after year. What did you tell her? I asked, my voice trembling slightly but still firm. I told her she would need a medical firm, certificate confirming mental incapacity, and that I couldn't process any such request without your written consent. He looked straight into my eyes. Melissa, I have to ask, have you had any memory issues or confusion lately? What do you think, mister? And quote. More? I replied with a faint, bitter smile. He nodded slowly. I know your mind is sharper than most young people I've met. That's exactly why I had to warn you. He pushed a folder toward me, copies of the documents Olivia had already submitted. She said she'd be back this week, with Ethan, to test sign a few papers. I left his office in a daze, but it wasn't a dream. It was the raw truth. My daughter no longer saw me as her mother, but as an obstacle, standing between her and money. In the days that followed, I began to notice all the things I had willfully ignored before. The offhand comments Olivia had made during her recent visits suddenly took on a whole new meaning. Mom, this house is too big for you to live in alone. Why not find something smaller? Not concern, but an appraisal of my assets. You still manage your own accounts? At your age, that must be exhausting. Not worry, but probing. Ethan says you should have someone help you with finances, just to be safe. Not advice, but preparation. What chilled me the most was reviewing my call history. Every time Olivia called, it was to ask for money. Every visit came with a new financial crisis. Every "I love you, Mom" was followed by a request for a transfer. A week later, I decided to investigate for myself. I hired a private investigator, Andrew Collins, recommended by Mr. Moore himself. I wanted to know exactly how Olivia and Ethan were spending the money I sent each month. 5 days later, the report arrived. A thick folder filled with photos, receipts, statements, and a detailed expense breakdown. And when I opened the first page, I knew whatever illusion of maternal love I had left was gone forever. Olivia and Ethan weren't struggling financially. They were simply living beyond their means, knowing I would always cover the gap. They dined at high-end restaurants in New York 3 times a week, wore designer clothes, spent weekends at luxury resorts, and held memberships at exclusive clubs, all funded by my money, while they saved their own income for themselves. But the photo that shattered me was one the investigator had taken on one of those glamorous nights. Olivia and Ethan sat with another couple, laughing, clinking glasses of expensive wine. The investigator had captured their conversation on tape. "You have no idea how easy my mom is to manipulate," Olivia said, her voice clear on the recording. "I just tell her we're struggling, shed a few tears, and the next day, the money's in our account." "She doesn't suspect anything?" the friend asked. "Suspect what?" "She craves the feeling of being needed, so she never questions it. Besides, taking care of me is her duty. No, that's what moms are for, Ethan chimed in. And when the time comes, everything will be ours anyway. Think of it as getting the inheritance early. I listened to that recording 3 times, sitting in the living room in absolute silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt something inside me turn to stone. That night, I opened my drawer and pulled out my old will. I read every line, remembering the day I signed it, how proud I'd been to know I could leave everything to my daughter, thinking it would secure her future once I was gone. But now I understood. Olivia didn't want to wait. She wanted control of my money while I was still alive. The next morning, I went to my lawyer, Richard Moore's office. I want to change my will, I said directly. Are you sure, Melissa? That's a major decision. I've never been more certain of anything. It took us 2 hours to rewrite everything. This time, Olivia would get exactly what she thought I was worth. Nothing. But that still wasn't enough. I wanted Olivia to understand not just the financial consequence, but the moral cost of treating her mother like a breathing ATM. I need you to prepare a few more documents, I told Mr. Moore. What kind? Cancel every automatic payment I make for Olivia. Close every account tied to her expenses. Revoke all her access to my finances. When do you want this done? Soon. Very soon. I left the office with my mind clearer than it had been in years. This was no longer about money. It was about respect. It was about proving that I was still a woman with dignity, not a machine built for emotional withdrawals. But before acting, I needed one last confirmation that Olivia truly saw me only as a source of money. So I invited her and Ethan to dinner at an upscale restaurant in Manhattan, telling them I had something important to discuss. I thought that maybe, in a place she considered high class, she would show me a little respect. Instead, she gave me the public humiliation I needed to confirm I was right. And as I walked out of that restaurant, down the city streets glowing with lights, I knew there was no turning back. The distance between Olivia and me was no longer about money, it was about morality. And it was time for both of us to understand the price of that distance. The next morning, I woke up at 5 a.m., not because I couldn't sleep, but because my mind had never been clearer. It was as if, for years, I'd been seeing life through fogged glass. And now, it had finally been wiped clean. I brewed my coffee and sat down at the breakfast table with all the files I'd prepared. 30 years of sacrifice, 6 months of bills paid on Olivia's behalf, and 3 weeks of evidence showing what she truly thought of me. The phone had rung 17 times since last night. Olivia, Ethan, and a few unknown numbers. They must have changed their phones. I didn't answer. For the first time in decades, my plan mattered more than my daughter's crises. At exactly 9 a.m., I called Mr. Moore. Have you seen the news? He asked immediately. What news? Olivia showed up at my office last night without an appointment, furious. She wanted to know if there's any way to reverse what you did. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile forming. And what did you tell her? I told her I couldn't discuss your finances without your consent. How did she react? She lost control. Said you were ruining her life, that you were a cruel mother, that this was abuse toward an adult child. Abuse? I repeated, letting out a dry laugh. She said that word for word? Yes. And Ethan threatened to go public to defend their reputation. Perfect, I said. Mr. Moore, I need you to speed up all the paperwork and one more thing. What is it? I want an official record of every payment I've made for Olivia in the past 6 months. Every bill, every transfer, every receipt. What for? Because when Olivia tries to paint me as a cruel mother who abandoned her child, I want clear proof of who truly abandoned whom. Mr. Richard Moore was silent for a moment. Melissa, are you sure you want to go this far? Once this becomes public, the mother-daughter relationship may never recover. That relationship broke years ago, Mr. Moore. It just took me too long to see it. After hanging up, I began phase 2 of my plan. I called First National Bank, where I kept my main accounts, and scheduled a meeting with Karen, the branch manager, who had known me for nearly 20 years. "Good morning, Mrs. Melissa. How can I help you today?" she asked with her familiar smile. "Karen, I need to review all my transactions from the past 6 months, especially automatic payments and transfers to others." She printed a nearly 20-page statement. Seeing the numbers on paper left me stunned. In just 6 months, I had transferred to Olivia the equivalent of an entire year's salary for an average American. "Is there an issue with these transactions, Mrs. Melissa?" Karen asked. "No, nothing at all," I replied calmly. "I just need it noted that all of these were voluntary, and I want every single one canceled immediately." Karen worked carefully, canceling each payment one by one. Olivia's apartment, health insurance, the secondary credit card linked to my account, her car insurance, even her luxury gym membership in Manhattan, all gone. "Are you certain, Mrs. Melissa? Some of these cancellations will take effect immediately and could cause trouble for the recipients." "I'm counting on that," I said without hesitation. My next stop was the private investigator's office. Andrew Collins, a quiet man in his 50s and a former Oregon police officer who specialized in family cases, greeted me in a small room stacked with files. "What do you need me to do now, Mrs. Melissa?" "I want you to record exactly how Olivia and Ethan react when they find out the money's gone. I want photos, audio, any evidence that reveals who they really are." "Are you sure?" he asked carefully. "Sometimes, knowing the truth only brings pain." "Andrew," I said, "after 66 years of living, I'd rather face a painful truth than stay comfortably ignorant." I handed him a list of their usual spots: restaurants, clubs, stores, and their work schedules. "I want you to follow them for 2 weeks. Let's see what happens when the credit cards are declined, when the bills go unpaid, when they have to face the consequences of the life they chose." That afternoon, while I was organizing files at home, Susan, longtime neighbor, stopped by. She'd heard the gossip around the neighborhood about the confrontation at the Manhattan restaurant. "Melissa, is it true? People are saying you completely cut off Olivia financially, that there was some big public scene?" I poured coffee and offered her a cup. "Susan," I asked, "what would you do if your own daughter called you a failure in front of everyone?" Susan sat down on the sofa and sighed. "Melissa, children say terrible things sometimes. It's part of growing up. Olivia is 41, Susan. She's not a child anymore. And being her mother doesn't mean I'm obligated to fund her in gratitude." Susan looked at me with that mix of pity and confusion, the same look I'd seen too many times from people who believe motherhood means endless endurance. "Don't you think you're being a bit harsh, Melissa?" "Me?" I gave a short laugh. "For the past 6 months, I've paid every living expense Olivia has: rent, food, debt, credit cards. Do you know how many times she's called just to ask how I'm doing? How many? None. Not once." Susan fell silent, then murmured, "Maybe she's just busy." "Exactly," I said. "Busy spending my money. Busy plotting to take over my assets." I told her about Olivia's visit to my lawyer, the papers she'd prepared to gain control over my finances, and the recordings investigator Collins had gathered. Susan sat still, her expression shifting from doubt to shock. I had no idea it was that serious. she whispered. No one does, I replied, because Olivia is very good at playing the devoted daughter, but only when there's an audience. That night, alone, in my quiet suburban Portland home, I made my final decision. I took out the small recorder I'd bought earlier that day, turned it on, and began to document my truth. My name is Melissa Carter, and I want everything I've experienced over these past few months to be recorded. I spoke for 2 hours, recounting every sacrifice, every insult, every act of manipulation. I spoke of the legal threats, the attempts to seize control, and the moment I realized I had been used for years. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said at the end of the recording. I'm doing it for dignity. For a woman who's worked her whole life to build something of value and deserves respect, especially from those who were supposed to love her. The next day, my phone rang nonstop, unknown numbers, urgent messages, emails from Olivia with subjects like family emergency and I need to talk to you right now. I didn't respond. Instead, I saved everything. Every missed call became proof of harassment. Every message became evidence of emotional manipulation. Because I had learned an important lesson. When you stop being useful to those who exploit you, their true nature shows almost immediately. And Olivia's true nature, the whole world deserved to see it. But before making anything public, I needed to be sure that when the final confrontation came, I'd have enough evidence to prove who the real victim was. The awakening of a quiet woman isn't just about finding her voice, it's about ensuring that when she finally speaks, no one can twist or ignore her truth. That takes careful preparation, strategic patience, and the calm resolve of someone who understands that unreturned love can sometimes be the highest form of self-respect. A week after canceling every account, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Olivia. For the first time in months, I answered. Mom. Her voice trembled, desperate. Good morning, Olivia. Mom, we need to talk right now. You can't do this. You can't just cut everything off without explaining. Without explaining, I repeated, my voice steady. I explained it very clearly at the Manhattan restaurant. Remember? Mom, I was angry that night. I'd been drinking. I didn't mean what I said. Didn't mean what exactly? The part where you called me a failure? Or the part where you said I was lost? Or maybe the part where you said I was trying to make myself seem important? On the other end of the line, silence. Mom, please. Ethan lost the apartment. We got evicted yesterday. We have nowhere to stay. And what exactly do you want me to do? I'm your daughter. You have to help me. I'm your mother, I said slowly, but I'm not your servant and I'm certainly not your ATM. But we have no money, nowhere to go. Olivia, you and Ethan are both adults with college degrees and decades of work experience. If the two of you can't handle your own finances without depending on a 66-year-old woman, then maybe the problem isn't me. I hung up before she could answer. Right after, I called Andrew Collins, the private investigator. Do you have the photos I asked for? Yes, Mrs. Melissa. I have everything. Would you like to see them? Come to my house this afternoon and bring it all. That afternoon, at 4 p.m., Mr. Collins arrived with a thick folder. The photos told a story worse than I expected. Olivia and Ethan hadn't been job hunting or cutting expenses. They'd spent the entire week visiting Ethan's parents, pleading, performing the role of the victims. In the photos, they sat in the living room, their faces full of false desperation, as if begging for help. Were you able to record anything? Part of it, he said, handing me a transcript. In it, Ethan told his father that I had lost my mind and that they needed legal intervention to protect the family's finances. Mr. Nguot, Collins also played me an audio clip. Ethan, fabricating stories, describing me as a confused old woman making irrational decisions. I also have this, he added, handing me another file. Olivia has visited 3 different law offices this week. She's trying to find a way to force you to continue supporting them financially. On what grounds? Olivia has visited 3 different. She claims you've abandoned your family, that you're being negligent toward your adult child, and she's even mentioned seeking a declaration of legal incapacity. I pressed my lips together. Exactly as I'd predicted. Olivia didn't want reconciliation. She wanted to trap me into legal obligation. Andrew, I need you to do one more thing. What's that? I want you to arrange a family meeting. A meeting? I want everyone involved in this story present Olivia, Ethan, Ethan's parents, my neighbor Susan, my lawyer Mr. Moore, and anyone else who's been pulled into this. I want them all to hear the truth once and for all, unfiltered. Mr. Collins looked at me, a bit uncertain. Are you sure? This could turn into a serious confrontation. Andrew, I said slowly, I've avoided confrontation for 66 years. It's time to face it. It took us over an hour to plan everything. The meeting would take place at my house in 3 days. Mr. Collins would ensure everyone showed up, each with a different reason for being there. What if Olivia refuses? She won't. Tell her I want to discuss a financial solution that I've reconsidered and want to reconcile. I smiled faintly. That's not even a lie, Andrew. I do want resolution just on my terms. For the next 2 days, I prepared everything carefully. I arranged all documents in chronological order, printed bank statements, recordings, photos, transcripts, a complete packet for each person who would attend. I also contacted Mrs. Evelyn, a longtime notary public in Portland, and invited her to serve as an official witness to the meeting. The night before, I reviewed everything one last time. Those files weren't just evidence. They were 30 years of a distorted relationship. And the most important thing I prepared was my final speech. I wrote it, practiced it, over and over, until I could say it fluently. No notes, no trembling, no tears. On the morning of the meeting, I woke up at 5 a.m., showered, and put on my best navy suit with light makeup. I wanted to look exactly like who I'd become, a woman who had reclaimed control of her life. Mr. Andrew Collins arrived early to set up the recording equipment. Are you sure you want everything recorded? He asked. I want every word preserved, I replied. After today, I don't want anyone twisting this story again. The first to arrive were my lawyer, Mr. Richard Moore, and Mrs. Evelyn, the notary. Then came Susan, my neighbor, her eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and worry. Ethan's parents arrived right on time, looking confused, clearly unsure why they'd been invited. Olivia and Ethan were the last to show up. I could tell immediately they'd had a rough few days. Olivia looked pale. Her clothes no longer had their usual touch of luxury. Ethan avoided my eyes, tension written all over his face. Mom, Olivia said, stepping forward as if to hug me. I knew you'd understand. Sit down, I replied, not returning the gesture. Everyone, please have a seat. Once the room settled, I stood up. Beside me was a small table with neatly stacked folders. I invited everyone here. I began calmly. Because over the past few weeks, there have been several versions of the same story spreading around. Some people have heard that I'm a cruel mother who abandoned her daughter. Others have heard that I'm old, confused, and incapable of making my own decisions. Olivia tried to speak, but I raised my hand to stop her. Today, everyone will hear the full truth, And when I'm done, you can each decide for yourselves who the real victim is. I opened the first folder. This is a detailed record of every dollar I've spent on Olivia over the past 6 months, along with recordings of Olivia and Ethan discussing how to manipulate me for money. I saw Olivia's face drain of color. The second file, I continued, contains evidence of a systematic attempt to take control of my finances, including Olivia's visit to my lawyer, asking about the process for declaring me legally incompetent. Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. And this, I said, holding up the thickest file, is 30 years' worth of financial sacrifice, emotional humiliation, and years of calculated manipulation. The room fell silent. Now, I said slowly, everyone is going to hear exactly what Olivia truly thinks of me. I pressed play on the recording Mr. Collins had captured at a restaurant in New York, Olivia bragging about how easily she could get money out of her mother. When the recording ended, I looked directly into my daughter's eyes. "Do you have anything to say, Olivia?" But before she could speak, I saw it, the pure fear in her eyes. The moment she realized the perfect image she'd spent years crafting was about to crumble. That's when I knew the real confrontation had only just begun. The room was frozen. Olivia's face was pale as paper. Ethan stared at the floor, and his parents looked at each other, stunned. Susan's mouth hung open, clearly unable to believe the daughter she'd once admired could speak that way about her own mother. "That was taken out of context," Olivia whispered, her voice shaking. "Out of context?" I repeated, keeping my tone calm. "Andrew, could you play the full version so everyone can hear the context?" Mr. Collins nodded and played the extended recording. For the next 10 minutes, the room was filled only with the sound of laughter and mockery, Olivia and Ethan ridiculing my naivety, plotting how to squeeze out more money, and discussing in detail how to take control of my assets. When the recording ended, Ethan's father was the first to speak. "Ethan, is this true?" Ethan looked up, trying to compose himself. "Dad, it's not what it sounds like. She's twisting everything to manipulate us. It was just a joke." "A joke?" My lawyer, Richard Moore, cut in, his voice rising. "Ethan, I have transcripts from my office showing Olivia asking about the exact legal process to have her mother declared incompetent." Ethan's mother turned to Olivia, her voice trembling. "Is it true you went to lawyers to have your own mother declared legally incompetent?" Olivia shot up from her seat, shouting, "Yes, it's true. Because she's not normal anymore. A normal mother wouldn't do this to her daughter." I stood up for the first time that evening. My voice rose. "A normal mother?" I repeated, locking eyes with her. "Olivia, I've been warning you for 30 years. Every time you embarrassed me and I stayed silent, that was a warning. Every time I paid your debts while you looked down on me, that was a warning. Every time I endured your insults because I thought that's what loving mothers are supposed to do, that too was a warning." "But we're family!" Ethan shouted, his voice breaking, joining Olivia's panic. "You have an obligation." My lawyer, Mr. Richard Moore, stood up, his voice calm and precise. "Allow me to clarify something. Under U.S. law, parents have no financial obligation toward adult children who are healthy and capable of working. Melissa's support was entirely voluntary, and she has every right to end it at any time." "But we don't have a place to live anymore!" Olivia burst into tears. "We have nowhere to go." "Is that my responsibility?" I asked evenly. "Olivia, you're 41. Ethan's 38. Both of you have college degrees, jobs, and years of experience. If the two of you can't manage to afford an apartment on 2 professional salaries, then the problem isn't me. My neighbor, Susan, spoke softly. Olivia, dear, why can't you two pay your own rent? What happened to your income? Olivia and Ethan looked at each other, and in that instant, I could see they both realized they could no longer hide their lifestyle. It's complicated, Olivia murmured. It's not complicated, I replied, opening another folder. It's very clear. I read aloud every expense. The private investigator, Mr. Collins, had documented. La Riviera restaurant, $300 per meal, 3 times a week for 6 months. Westwood Golf Club annual membership fee, $5,000. Bloomingdale's weekly shopping trips. Beverly Elite Spa monthly treatments. Ethan's mother whispered, horrified, My God! While you were paying their warders, rent, utilities, insurance, and credit card debts, they were spending their salaries on luxury? We deserve a good life, Olivia screamed, completely losing control. We work hard. We're not going to live like poor people just because you never learned how to enjoy life. The mood in the room shifted entirely, no longer shock, but disgust. I looked around and saw the realization dawning on everyone's faces. Olivia, Susan said slowly, did you just say that the mother who worked 2 jobs for years to pay your tuition never knew how to enjoy life? Yes, Olivia shouted, her voice breaking between tears and rage. Always playing the martyr, always complaining, always acting like a victim, but never doing anything to change it. Working double shifts doesn't count? I asked calmly. That's not the point. Selling my wedding ring and my mother's jewelry to pay your tuition, does that not count either? Long time ago. And mortgaging my house to cover your hospital bills during your 2nd year of college? All mothers are supposed to do that. Ethan's mother shot up from her seat, her face red with anger. That's enough, Ethan. We're leaving. I'm not sitting here listening to your wife insult the woman who paid for your lavish lifestyle while you lied to the whole family about your finances. She turned to me, her voice steady, filled with both anger and respect. Mrs. Melissa, I apologize for my son's behavior. We had no idea about any of this. I know, I replied. That's exactly why I asked you to come today. Olivia turned desperately to her in-laws. Please, you can't leave. We need your help. We have nowhere to go. Ethan's father looked at her, his expression a mix of disappointment and disgust. Olivia, you have 2 choices. Find an apartment that fits your income, or get a second job the way your mother did for years. But that would mean living like, Susan whispered. Olivia bowed her head, her voice breaking, like ordinary people. With those 3 words, she exposed her true self completely. Ethan made one last attempt. Melissa, let's be reasonable. We can work something out, maybe less support, just until things settle down. No, I said firmly. No negotiations, no deals, no less, because there's nothing left to reduce. Financial support is over permanently. You can't do that, Olivia screamed. Already did. I picked up the final and most important folder. This is my new will, along with a legal declaration of financial independence between both parties. As of today, Olivia, you no longer have any legal right to expect financial support from me. What does that mean? Ethan asked, his voice trembling. My lawyer, Mr. Richard Moore, answered for me. It means that Mrs. Melissa has formally documented that any future assistance, if given, would be voluntary, not a family obligation. He paused for a moment, then continued. It also means she has removed Olivia from her list of heirs in her will. You can't disinherit me, Olivia screamed. Already did, I replied calmly. Everything I've worked for over the past 66 years will go to charities that actually help people in need, not those who feel entitled. Olivia collapsed into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably, but those weren't tears of regret, only the panic of losing money. "This isn't over," Ethan muttered. "We'll sue." "Go ahead," I said. "Mr. Moore will represent me. And this entire meeting has been legally recorded by the notary." From the corner of the room, Mrs. Evelyn, the notary, nodded in confirmation she had been documenting the session the whole time. "Any lawsuit," I added, "will only make all of this public record showing the world exactly what kind of people you both are." For the first time that evening, Olivia looked directly at me. In her eyes, I no longer saw the daughter I once carried and sacrificed for only a stranger who had worn my child's face for years. "I hate you," she whispered. "I know," I replied. "You've made that very clear." And as I watched Olivia and Ethan gather their things and leave, I realized that this night of truth had exposed what I'd been denying for decades. My daughter never loved me. She only loved what I could give her. But for the first time in my life, that truth no longer hurt, because I had finally learned to love myself more than the illusion of being a loved mother. 3 days later, my phone rang at 7 a.m. It was Susan, her voice anxious. "Melissa, you need to know this. Olivia's telling a completely different version of events." "How different?" "She's saying you're mentally unstable, that you attacked her without reason, that you're showing signs of dementia, and the family needs to intervene to protect you from yourself." I sat down at the kitchen table, holding my still warm cup of coffee. Where is she saying all this? Everywhere. Melissa at work, around the neighborhood, even to Father Michael at church. She's spinning a story that you're the victim of your own mind and that she's the devoted daughter trying to save you. I just smiled, exactly as I predicted. Olivia had learned nothing from our confrontation. Instead of reflecting, she doubled down, manipulating harder to twist the story in her favor. "Susan," I said, "could you come over this morning? There's something I want to show you." An hour later, Susan sat in my living room as I prepared a small slideshow on the TV. I had digitized everything: recordings, photos, and documents. "I'll show you a few things, but you must promise to keep them secret until I decide what to do next." Susan nodded, still visibly shaken. I started with the most recent recording, Olivia openly describing how she manipulated me for money. Then came the photos Mr. Collins had taken Olivia and Ethan, living lavishly while I paid for their basic needs. "Oh my God!" Susan gasped. I had no idea she was that calculating. Now you'll hear what she says about the people who've helped her all these years. I played another recording captured 2 days after the family meeting. Olivia's voice rang out clearly through the speakers. "That old woman's really losing it, but I've got witnesses to her erratic behavior." Ethan even recorded part of her little meltdown the other day. "What are you going to do now?" a friend's voice asked in the recording. "I'm going to record every interaction between us. I'll prove she's a danger to herself. And once I have enough evidence, I'll move forward with the legal process to have her declared incompetent." "But didn't you say the lawyer refused to help her?" "That old man took her side. But there are plenty of other lawyers, ones who understand that adult children have rights when their parents start losing it." Susan looked at me, horrified. "Melissa, this is absolutely vile." "Wait," I said calmly. "There's more." The recording continued. Olivia's voice came through, cold and calculating. She was outlining her detailed plan. She intended to contact social services, reporting that I was a danger to myself. She would collect statements from neighbors about my so-called erratic behavior, then use my decision to stop financial support as proof of memory loss. And once I have the legal authority to control her finances, Olivia said clearly in the recording, I can undo all the stupid decisions she's ever made. When the recording ended, Susan's eyes filled with tears. How could a daughter do that to her own mother? Susan, I said slowly, Olivia never saw me as her mother. She only saw me as a source of money. What will you do now? She asked, her voice trembling. I'll do exactly what she's doing. Tell my story. The difference is, my story comes with real evidence. That afternoon, I began my own campaign, but instead of manipulating emotions the way Olivia did, I chose the simplest path to let people see the truth. My first stop was Father Michael's office, since Olivia had already been there before me. Father Michael, I said as I walked in, I heard that Olivia came to talk to you about me. Yes, Melissa, he replied. I'm truly concerned. She said you've been acting very strange lately. What exactly did she say, Father? She said you cut off all financial support for no reason, leaving them without a home. That you've been confused, forgetful, and might need medical help. I took out my tablet and played the same recordings I'd shown Susan. Father Michael leaned in, his face shifting from concern to shock, then to outrage. This can't be real, he whispered. Father, I have proof of every word I'm saying. These recordings were made by a professional investigator. But why would you hire an investigator, Melissa? Because for months, I felt something was wrong in the way Olivia was treating me. But I couldn't pinpoint what it was. Now I know my instincts were completely right. I showed him the financial documents, the photos of her lavish spending, and the transcript where Olivia openly admitted to manipulating me. Father Michael, I said, I'm doing it to protect myself from her. What do you mean by that? Olivia is trying to use religious, social, and legal institutions to take control of my life. She's building a fake case of mental incompetence based entirely on lies. I played the latest recording Olivia describing in detail her plan to have me declared mentally unfit. Father Michael took off his glasses and rubbed his forehead. Melissa, I don't even know what to say. Then just say the truth, Father. When anyone asks about me, tell the truth. My next stop was the community center, where Olivia had already spoken to several of my neighbors. I found 3 women about my age chatting quietly together. What are you ladies talking about? I asked, though I already knew. Melissa, we're worried about you, said Marlene. Olivia told us you've been confused that you might need help. What exactly did she say? She said you attacked her and her husband for no reason, threw them out of your house in a rage, then canceled all your bank accounts and forgot why you did it. I sighed softly. All right. Let me show you something. I unlocked my phone and played a few selected recordings. Not all of them. Just enough for them to see the massive holes in Olivia's story. But why would she lie like that? One woman asked. Because she's trying to gain legal control over my assets, I replied bluntly. And because she needs a reason to justify being cut off, she wants everyone to believe that a 66-year-old mother with memory problems acted irrationally. I showed them the spending receipts, photos of fancy dinners, designer items, and luxury club memberships, all paid for by me, while Olivia and Ethan used their own salaries for personal indulgence. Did you ladies know that for 6 months I paid Olivia's rent, utilities, insurance, and debts? And during that entire time, she didn't call me once just to ask how I was doing? I could see their expressions change from pity to realization that they had been deceived. What will you do next, Melissa? Marlene asked. I'll keep living with dignity, and I'll make sure that anyone Olivia tries to manipulate will know the entire truth. That evening, the private investigator, Mr. Collins called me with news. Mrs. Melissa, Olivia, has hired her own private investigator. For what? To record your so-called erratic behavior? She's also recording your phone conversations. I laughed. How interesting, I said. I'm not worried. I have nothing to hide. Every action I take is supported by evidence and legal documentation. If Olivia wants to record, even better. She's only collecting more proof that you're completely sane and emotionally stable, I added. What would you like me to do next? Mr. Collins asked. I want you to document every one of her actions, every person she speaks to, every lie she tells, every attempt she makes to twist the story. Because when this reaches the legal stage, I want enough evidence to prove the smear campaign she's running. That weekend, I realized Olivia had underestimated her opponent. She thought I would react emotionally, lose my temper, get defensive, and try to justify myself in desperation so she could use that as proof of mental instability. But instead, she was facing a calm, collected woman, one who had learned to weaponize the very composure she once exploited. While Olivia built lie upon lie to cover her tracks, all I had to do was tell the truth, a truth backed by evidence and documentation that couldn't be denied. This public exposure wasn't just to reveal Olivia's true nature, but to show that manipulation fails when the victim knows how to document the facts. And I had recorded everything. On Tuesday morning, exactly 2 weeks after the family meeting, I got a call from my lawyer, Richard Moore. Melissa, you need to come to my office immediately. Olivia just filed an official petition requesting the court to declare you legally incompetent. When? I asked. Yesterday, he said. I have a copy of the entire case file. She also filed a motion to gain temporary control over your finances until the psychological evaluation is completed. An hour later, I was in his office. Papers were spread across the desk, evidence that a full-blown legal battle had just begun. What's her argument? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. She claims you've been acting erratically, making major financial decisions without consulting your family, and showing signs of paranoia and hostility. She even submitted sworn statements from neighbors, saying they've seen you confused or upset lately. Mr. Moore handed me the affidavits. 5 people from the neighborhood had signed them, claiming they'd noticed troubling behavior. Do you recognize any of these names? I looked closely. 3 I barely knew. 2 were Olivia's close friends. Richard, this is staged. Olivia convinced them to sign false statements based on her twisted version of the story. I know, he replied, but legally, we still have to respond. The judge has already scheduled a preliminary hearing for Friday. What does that mean? It means we have 3 days to prepare our entire defense file. Mr. Moore looked at me seriously. We need medical evidence proving you're mentally sound, financial records that demonstrate stable management, and credible witnesses who can refute Olivia's accusations. That afternoon, I began the most important battle of my life. I wasn't just protecting my money or property, I was defending my right to control my own life. My first stop was the clinic of Dr. John Carter, my family doctor for over 10 years. I explained everything and requested a full psychological evaluation. Melissa, this is absurd, he said after reviewing the case file. You're completely lucid. For a 66-year-old woman, your cognitive sharpness exceeds that of many younger people. But doctor, I need the results to be officially documented. I underwent 2 hours of continuous testing, cognition, memory, reasoning, and decision-making. The results? All perfectly normal. Let me ask you this, Melissa, he said as he signed the report. Why would your daughter do this? With these results, there's no medical basis whatsoever for declaring incompetence. Because I replied. Olivia has never understood the difference between mom is crazy and mom made a decision I don't like. My next stop was First National Bank, where I'd been a client for over 2 decades. Karen, the branch manager, greeted me with concern. Mrs. Melissa, I heard rumors you're having legal trouble. Is there something I should know? Mrs. Karen, I need you to prepare a detailed report of all my financial activity from the past 5 years. I want a record of every investment decision, every transaction, every transfer. To prove that someone who's managed her finances successfully for decades doesn't suddenly become incompetent overnight. Mrs. Karen's report was impressive. More than 10 years of stable financial management, smart investments, responsible spending, and steady asset growth year after year. Mrs. Melissa, said Mrs. Karen after reviewing the report. You manage your finances better than 90% of our clients. If this goes to court, I'm willing to testify on your behalf. On Wednesday morning, Mr. Collins, the private investigator, brought unexpected news. Mrs. Melissa, I have some interesting information about the private investigator Olivia hired. What is it? Turns out, he's been recording Olivia's behavior as well, and he doesn't like what he's been seeing. Mr. Collins handed me a preliminary report he'd obtained through professional contacts. In it, Olivia's private investigator concluded that she was attempting to manipulate evidence and fabricate testimony. Would he be willing to testify in court? I asked. Not only willing, Collins replied. He volunteered. He said that in 20 years on the job, he's never seen anyone work so hard to manufacture a fake lawsuit. On Thursday night, just 1 day before the hearing, I received an unexpected call. It was Ethan, Olivia's husband. Melissa, we need to talk. About what? About stopping this before it goes too far. I'm not the one who started it, Ethan. You two did. Listen, he said. We can reach a settlement. Olivia's willing to accept a smaller allowance, just enough to keep the apartment and health insurance. In exchange, for what? In exchange for her withdrawing the lawsuit. Ethan, do you really think I'd negotiate in a legal extortion attempt? It's not extortion. It's just a family resolution. If Olivia wants a family resolution, she can start by withdrawing the lawsuit built entirely on lies. Ethan went silent for a few seconds. What are you talking about? I'm saying that for the past 2 weeks, I've documented every lie Olivia told, every person she manipulated, every attempt she made to fabricate evidence against me. If this goes to court, everything will become public. You're exaggerating. Exaggerating, Ethan. I spoke slowly. I have a recording of Olivia admitting to falsifying evidence. I have statements from people she tried to bribe into signing fake affidavits. I have documents proving every dollar you two spent on luxury while spreading the story that I'm the cruel mother who abandoned her child. If this goes to court, I continued, I will not only prove that I'm completely competent, but that Olivia is a calculated manipulator who has emotionally exploited her own mother for years. You can't do that, Ethan shouted. I already did, I replied. Everything is recorded and ready to be presented in court tomorrow. On Friday morning, I arrived at the Multnomah County Courthouse in Oregon, dressed in my neatest black suit, carrying 3 thick folders filled with evidence. Accompanied by my lawyer, Richard Moore, and 2 psychological experts, Olivia and Ethan stood across the hallway with a young lawyer who looked visibly nervous. When Judge Rodriguez called the case, everything moved quickly. Your Honor, Mr. Moore began, the plaintiff's petition is based entirely on fabricated allegations. We request that the case be dismissed immediately, and further, that an investigation be opened into the submission of false evidence to this court. Evidence? The judge asked. Moore presented a medical report confirming full cognitive capacity, a formal psychological 2C evaluation, detailed financial records, and the audio recording of Olivia admitting to manipulation. I watched Olivia's lawyer's face turn pale as the recording played. Your Honor, he stammered, I request a brief recess to speak privately with my client. Denied. The judge replied. Does the plaintiff have any response to this evidence? Olivia stood up, trembling. Those recordings were obtained illegally. In public places? The judge asked. Yes, Your Honor, Moore answered. At restaurants and public areas where there's no expectation of privacy. Then they're admissible. Anything else to say, Miss Olivia? Olivia glanced at her lawyer, who was clearly signaling for her to withdraw. Your Honor, she finally whispered, I withdraw my petition. And do you also withdraw all false statements previously submitted as evidence? Olivia lowered her head. Yes. Very well, the judge declared. The case is dismissed. And Miss Olivia, consider this an official warning about submitting falsified materials to the court. As I left the courthouse, Olivia and Ethan walked away in silence. What now? I asked Richard Moore. Now, he smiled, you can live in peace. Olivia no longer has any legal grounds to bother you. And after today, no reputable attorney will ever take a similar case again. That afternoon, I sat in my living room, looking at the folders that had once held the evidence of my battle, and realized I didn't need them anymore. The fight was over. But more important than winning the case, I had reclaimed something I thought I'd lost forever. The right to live my life on my own terms, without guilt, without manipulation, and without paying for anyone's respect. The final blow I delivered wasn't against Olivia, but against my former self, the woman who once endured, who believed that love meant accepting being disrespected. And that woman no longer exists. 6 months after the trial, I sat on the balcony of my new home in Santa Rosa, California. Not big, not luxurious, but mine completely, freely, and peacefully. I had bought it with the very money that had once been wasted funding Olivia's lavish life. This morning, I received a letter not from Olivia, because since the day she left the courthouse, she hasn't contacted me once, but from my lawyer, Richard Moore. He informed me that Olivia had tried to appeal the will through another attorney, but the case was dismissed immediately. After what happened in court, her legal credibility completely collapsed. Now, any case Olivia files involving mental incompetence is automatically considered unreliable. I was surprised to find that I felt nothing. A year ago, just hearing that Olivia planned to sue would have sent me into panic and guilt. But now, it only feels like confirmation of what I've known for a long time, that she will never stop believing her mother's assets are her birthright. Mrs. Susan, my neighbor and dear friend, still visits every week. Yesterday, she told me that Olivia and Ethan had moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of San Bernardino, a place they now have to pay for themselves with their own salaries. She also said Olivia continues telling everyone that I'm a heartless mother who abandoned her family. Doesn't that bother you? Susan asked. I smiled and took a sip of tea. Susan, for 66 years, I lived afraid of what others thought of me. I tried to be the perfect mother, the perfect woman. Someone who never caused trouble or said no. And do you know what I got in return? What? She asked. A daughter who despised me, but still expected me to fund her entire life. I've learned the most important lesson over these past few months. The people who truly respect me don't need me to justify my decisions. And those who judge me based on Olivia's gossip, well, they never really knew who I was anyway. Last month, I started volunteering at a center in San Francisco for elderly women abandoned by their families. It's heartbreaking, but strangely liberating to hear stories just like mine, mothers who gave everything and received only neglect, deceit, and emotional abuse in return. How did you get through it? One woman asked me. A mother left at the center after her son drained her bank account. I stopped confusing love with transaction, I answered. I stopped believing that being a good mother means letting people mistreat you. Karen, the branch manager at First National Bank, has also become an unexpected friend. Last week, during lunch, she told me something interesting. Melissa, did you know Olivia came to the bank last month? For what? She asked if there was any way to regain access to the accounts that used to be under both your names. When we told her those accounts had been permanently closed, she asked if she could reopen an investigation into your financial capacity. What did you tell her? I asked. We said that after the report the bank submitted to the court, any attempt to question your competence would be considered harassment. I simply smiled. It's astonishing. Olivia still believes that if she finds the right trick, she can reverse the consequences. She doesn't understand that the problem isn't strategy. It's that the truth cannot be reversed. As for Mr. Collins, the private investigator who helped me through it all, he's now a close friend. He helped me install a security system in my new home. Not because I fear Olivia might harm me physically, but because I want evidence if she ever tries to threaten or harass me again. Do you think she'll try something else? Collins asked while adjusting the cameras. Olivia is like an addict, I said. But, instead of drugs, she's addicted to getting everything without effort. Addicts never stop until the price of continuing becomes more painful than stopping. Do you think she's reached that point yet? He asked. I looked out the window, sunlight spilling over the steaming cup of tea. I don't know, I said softly, but this time, I'm ready for anything. Last month, Father Michael came to visit me. He wanted to apologize for once believing Olivia's story. Melissa, I've been thinking a lot, he said, his voice full of regret. How did I not see the signs? I understand, Father, I replied gently. Olivia is very good at what she does. She's had decades of experience manipulating people's trust. Have you ever thought about forgiving her? Father Michael asked. I paused for a moment, then spoke slowly. I've thought about it for months, and I've realized something: I can't forgive someone who has never admitted to doing wrong. Olivia doesn't believe she hurt me. She believes I hurt her by making decisions she didn't like. So, there will never be reconciliation. For that to happen, Olivia would have to acknowledge decades of lies and emotional abuse. And based on what I know, that's nearly impossible. Last week, I got a call from Ethan's lawyer, Olivia's husband. Apparently, they've been struggling financially since losing access to my money. The lawyer asked if I'd consider a small amount of support in exchange for Olivia signing a document promising never to question my mental capacity again. What did I say? I told my lawyer, Richard Moore. I told him the answer was no. You didn't even want to hear the terms? Richard asked. I told him this. Any deal with Olivia is like handing wine to an addict. It will never work. The only way Olivia will learn how to live without manipulating me is by actually living without the DAS, ability to manipulate me. Yesterday, while sorting through old papers, I found a photo of Olivia at 5 years old. We were at Central Park. She was sitting on a swing, smiling brightly, carefree. For a moment, my heart ached for that little girl. But then I remembered that child grew into a woman who saw her mother as an obstacle between her and money and nostalgia. no matter how beautiful, cannot erase 30 years of deliberate choices that caused pain and manipulation. This morning, as I sat on the balcony of my small home in Santa Rosa, sipping coffee, I realized something strange. For the first time in decades, I am not afraid. Not afraid of phone calls asking for money, not afraid of fabricated crises demanding I intervene, not afraid of being judged for protecting myself. I've come to understand that freedom isn't just the absence of control, but the presence of enough self-respect to walk away from any relationship that requires you to betray your own dignity. Last night, before going to bed, I did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed. Not for Olivia, not for her happiness or success, but for my own peace. I prayed for the strength to uphold the boundaries I've set, for the wisdom never to confuse sacrifice with motherhood. And for the first time in decades, when I finished praying, I felt true peace. Tomorrow, I'll turn 67. I'll celebrate my birthday alone in this house, with a good bottle of wine and a dinner I'll cook myself. Because finally, I've realized something. The best companion I could ever have is the woman who values herself and refuses to be treated poorly. My name is Melissa Carter. For 66 years, I was only known as Olivia's mother. But now I'm simply Melissa, and my story is just beginning. Melissa's story is a fictional work inspired by real experiences, with names and locations changed to protect privacy. Though unique in detail, her journey touches a very real pain shared by many mothers, caught between love and self-respect, forced to choose between silent endurance or speaking up for themselves. None of us are ever prepared for the moment our own children become the source of our pain, and there is never an easy choice. But as Melissa discovered, sometimes speaking up isn't rebellion. It's preservation of dignity and of faith. May God bless every heart that has been hurt, so they may find peace, courage, and true love again. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the 2 stories at the end of this video, where women like Melissa continue to find light in the darkness.